Never, never, ever, ever, never, ever, yeah, simple as I may say, never ever give up in a life.
A preview of Prison, Poetry and Intersectionality, a monologue written by Dr. Marcia Morgan.
I think it looks nice, isn't it? I actually like how it stands out.
Hey guys, my name is Mahalia and I found the camera. Yeah. Got me a bit of wine. It was free. Goodbye.
Okay, so hi everyone, thanks ever so much for coming. This is sort of by way of a little introduction. I first met Marcia in, it's been about 2021, around summer 2021, and Marcia came to see my play Prison Dialogues, which was on at the All Saints in Lewis. And then, so I do a bit of work in prisons, and then we came on to another prison event that happened afterwards, and we got chatting. I think also my wife had met you. She had been at some event where you'd been reading some of your poems. And so we had a chat, and you were telling me about this monologue that you were writing and how it related to your PhDs and all these type of things. And for whatever rash reason that I had at the time, I said, well, maybe we should work together. I'm trying to, sort of develop it as a performance. And if you're interested in that idea, and you seem to be. So I think I can't remember when we started doing it. It's probably sometime in the autumn. And then we worked for a bit on developing the ideas that you had. And then there was a break when you went over to Jamaica. And I was doing other stuff, and then we picked it up again earlier this year. And I think for me, that there was a point of working through it where I suddenly thought, okay, I think this, we've got quite an interesting thing emerging here. And so we've kept going, and so this is the first time, I've called it the first public sharing as a work in progress of this. And it's quite an important moment in it, because it's the first time where it's not just me and Marcia in a room knocking ideas back and forth or doing it informally. It's the first time where Marcia's going to be out there. This is me doing it for you. So it's quite an important moment. And really, what's nice is just to get some bits of feedback. I mean, I do this with everything that I do. I always get to a point where we've developed an idea, and for the first time we've had a bunch of people in a room. We've tried it out. We've got no idea what's going to happen. You don't know what you don't know what you met. And with lots of stuff I do, it could be terrible or it could be fantastic. I've absolutely no idea until you actually do it. So, but I think that there's something very strong in this, and so it's just been a pleasure for me to work on it with you. We have got these little comments things. But if you can manage to write one little comment, it doesn't matter how small the comment is.
Have you got a big bit of paper in or is that?
This is it. It's good having small bits. It's good having small bits of paper because it's less pressure on people to think, oh shit, I've got to write reams and also fill in a questionnaire about who I am. I've always tried to avoid that. I think small bits of paper are good. I remember that there's one of the plays I did, and someone's comment on it was totes amaze, and that was enough. That's all you need. That is a joyous thing. So, but just a small comment, if you feel moved to at the end, it would help. Partly because if Marcia wants to get some funding to try and develop it a bit further and take it into different spaces and explore it as a project, having little bits of feedback, I know from my experience, makes a huge amount of difference. It's much better than saying, oh, it's really great or anything like that. It's hearing someone's personal response matters quite a lot. So that's probably enough from me. And over to Marcia, I guess, where you're on.
Great, thank you for that, Mark. So welcome everyone to Prison, Poetry and Intersectionality. Intersectionality, in simple terms, just talks about the fact that we all have individual identities which interconnect to create our own experience. They either make us feel part of a situation or excluded from a situation. But our intersectional identities is what creates us, what makes us unique from somebody else. So what I'll be talking about this evening is about prisons, using poetry, storytelling, and the voices of women who took part in my PhD back in 2010. I converted my PhD thesis into 2 books, Black Women Prison Employees, The Intersectionality of Gender and Race, and also The Silenced Voice, There is Purpose in Pain. But I hope as you journey with me as I share this story of working in prisons through the framework of the intersectionality of gender and race, and also the psychology of organisations, as in what happens at the unconscious level, you'll get a chance to see what prison work is all about through the framework of intersectionality. But first of all, who actually thinks about prison work, or even thinks about being a prison officer, or even thinks about working in a prison? I mean, it's not really the norm, it's not something that we want to do, because prisons are actually hidden behind a 17-foot wall. But when everyone starts a new role, they experience anxiety and fear because they don't know what they're going into, they don't know who they're going to meet, they don't know what the work is going to be like. But for someone that's got an intersectional identity that can make them feel isolated, or can make them feel alone, or can make them feel excluded, there's that additional fear and trepidation. And that's something that many black women keep a secret. That's the title of this poem, My Secret. I'm scared, I'm frightened, I'm all alone. I'm invisible, I'm inconspicuous, I'm undisclosed. Will they see me? Will they accept me? Will they notice me for who I am? It's a question that we always ask ourselves. I interviewed Monique. She was a catering manager at HMP Swahili.
So I went in the first day, one of the first things I can remember was that this inmate come up to me. Why are you making it? And he said, ooh, one of the staff didn't expect you to walk through the doors. I said, why do you say that? She said, well, just see the look on this particular person's face when I walked in. She was obviously expecting somebody white, and I was obviously back, and the manager who interviewed me had not said what colour was. He just said, you know, you can get me started.
Now can you imagine, you're joining a new organisation and your colleagues are excited to meet you, and then for that brief moment they're startled by the fact that they're not the same reflection as you. That's what Monique is talking about. Now Monique's experience is quite similar to my own. I've worked in 4 prisons, and it's literally a deja vu moment. I arrive at prison, excited to start a new job, and I get welcomed in a similar way. This poem is called Hear My Cry, because it's quite painful when you're constantly being reminded that you don't belong in this organisation. Hi, my name is Marcy Morgan. This is my first day at HMP Futura. I am so excited to be working here. I'm a trainee teacher. No, I'm not a domestic visitor. Hi, my name is Marcy Morgan. I am so excited to be working here. Look, I've actually got my name on my ID tag. Hello, my name is Marcy Morgan. See, I've got my ID, and I've actually brought my keys and my chains from my other prison. No, this is not my first time working in a prison. It's my 3rd prison. I'm a diversity manager. Hello, my name is Marcia Morgan. I'm a new senior manager here. Yes, I know my voice is, Mancunian, and I might look a bit different, but I can assure you that I'm fully experienced. I've had 7 years. I've worked at 3 other prisons before arriving here, and I'm more than qualified for this role. I'm tired of having to explain I'm an employee. I'm tired of having to justify my position. I'm tired of having to have my ID on show with my keychain and not be mistaken to being a domestic visitor. I'm tired of having to make excuses for your suspicion and having to think of ways to make you feel that I'm worthy to be your colleague. I mean, all I've ever wanted was to be treated as your equal, to be respected as your colleague, and to feel part of your team. But despite my persistence, I keep meeting resistance, and here I am now, actually justifying my existence. For 22 years, I've cried secret tears. I've got angry at the system and questioned what I could have actually have done to make you feel that I'm worthy to be your colleague. But I'm done. I'm no longer going to pretend, caught up in this delusion of equality of opportunity, a mirage that actually causes me confusion. I'm no longer deluded. I'm here, and this is where I work. Now imagine you're part of a bilateral world where one part of your world is dominated by white patriarchal systems, prisons, and then you're part of another world, which is your community. You can sometimes feel isolated in a space where you should feel welcomed and understood. Likewise, when you're in the world of work, you're not able to be your authentic self because of the intersectionality of your gender and race. Well, that can be a lonely space where you're caught up in these two areas. Now, you're always remembered, but not necessarily for the right reasons. You're remembered because you're different physically. And sometimes you have to question, who am I? But then you have those who then call you out and say, who are you? Well, this poem is called You Are. You're a sellout. You're a coconut. You're a disgrace. You're not one of us. You're one of them. You're an officer. You're a screw. You're a warden. You ain't nothing new. You're not better than me because you've got the keys. You're just like me, but you're on their team. You're black, not proud, because you're surrounded by white. You're not meant to be in here wearing your black and whites. You're black. You're a woman just like me. You should be out there, unless you're wearing blue stripes like me. Now, black and whites and blue stripes refers to the uniforms that are worn. Prison officers wear black trousers, whether they're male or female, with a white shirt. Whereas prisoners, back in the day, would wear blue striped shirts and jeans. Now they tend to wear either grey tracksuits or burgundy tracksuits. But you know, when you work in an organisation like that, all you want is to belong. You want to be part in and you just want to be let in.
So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me in.
But when you're the only one, or you're underrepresented, or you're part of that minority group, it's difficult. And sometimes you then experience a thing called microaggressions. Now, microaggressions come in all different shapes and sizes, and we've all probably experienced it because of our own individual intersectional identities. But this poem's called You're Not One of Them. Go back to where you come from. This ain't your land. You're from that exotic place. You're okay for your kind. I've never worked with blacks before, but I've locked up loads though. They're loud and shout and say Ross and Bumbleclot. Look at him. He still can't speak. What's that thing that they do with their hands? Haven't they been taught the etiquette of a handshake? You picked it up well though, and you speak pretty good as well. Oh, so you've realised I'm black then? You're not one of them. I don't see your colour. We work well together. You know I'm not racist. You're my friend. You know I listen to Bob Marley and smoke weed now and then. Now you would have heard two terms, Ross and Bumbleclot. Well, they're part of the Jamaican patois. Ross refers to shock, excitement, that sort of bewilderment, whereas Bumbleclot is sometimes classed as an expletive, a cursing word. And that prison officer would have heard those terms being used quite frequently during domino games, where he would have probably overheard African Caribbean men discussing and debating and becoming quite charismatic in the way in which they interacted with each other. Now there are 122 prisons in England and Wales, and the sound is constant. It's always noisy, whether it's keys rattling or the concrete noise that's made when staff are walking along those hard, sterile places, or whether you hear prisoners shouting through the windows, doors locking, bars clanging. It's noisy. It's also very sterile. Security, order, and boundaries. the three most important rules. It's easy to become institutionalized when you're no longer sensitized to the regime of prison life.
So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me in.
I'd like to introduce you to Anastasia. She's a diversity manager at H&P Benham because she talks about when you're working in prisons, you have to become thick-skinned. And this is what she said.
Being in diversity, you see complaints from prisoners and staff, and you kind of hunt with the horns and run with the ears. And staff don't always like that. And sometimes staff will try and control what you do with a prisoner's complaint. But I had to draw the line. Staff curse me and I've had to kind of, have a quiet word with people. But it is very direct and very personal and very in your face. But very nicely done, with respect. But I don't stand for rubbish, man. I don't stand for rubbish. Purely because the environment is very predatory. It's sort of like, if they smell your fear, you'll be eaten alive.
But yet, prison work is very valuable and rewarding. Now, I wrote this poem because I always remember a time that I was working with a particular prisoner, and that particular prisoner has shared with me the fact that he'd been in and out of prison from being a child, going through Borstal, going into young offenders, into adult prisons, and he was probably in his 50s by the time we met. But when he was able to read his daughter's letter, it changed his life. And that was probably the most rewarding experience that I ever had of working with prisoners. Now, I asked AP Stoughton, who's here with us this evening, to recite this poem, because when I met him on the poem circuit, he just reminded me so much of this prisoner, and thankfully he agreed to recite it.
My dear Elizabeth, I can now read and write.
Whenever I listen to that poem, it takes me back to that classroom, and I remember the guy as though it was just yesterday, when he came into the classroom with that letter and he asked the people to sit in the corner and just read it. And for that hour, he literally giggled and reread that letter. You heard him refer to dear and ear. Well, that bit is actually true. He actually shared with me how he lost his ear in a fight. Only because I started this PhD journey and now trying to share and explain the theories that I've used in my research in different methods. But yet the organisation that I set out to help chose to then turn against me because of my research. And I wrote this poem to sort of encapsulate the last 4 years experience of being an academic, focusing on prison occupational literature from the perspective of gender and race. My name, my reputation, that's all I have. When it's taken away from me, you have to fight back. You try to destroy me, attack my credibility. Now I stand firm, no longer deterred. 45 months of slander and defamation, you tried to break me, but God created this. Devoted to their racist motivations, they're so ignorant, they just don't want to hear the truth. Obstructions, barriers, challenges from all corners of the organisation. The long war, the psychological freedom has begun. My day in court was a distant thought. With all this tenacity, now it's a reality. So why do I focus on the intersectionality of race and gender? Because the story of prison work leaves me out. Deleted from the stanzas, the verses, the scripts. Pages upon pages, black on white, no mention of her story. To be black, to be a woman, does not mean that you're not man enough, or woman enough, or white enough. You're just an employee within this space. But without an intersectionality approach, the black woman's story is lost.
Word that my hair and my chestnut skin. Unconscious bias is just an excuse to avoid looking at it. So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me rising.
Thank you.
You know me, I like attention. Just one simple question. How do you feel now that you're done?
I feel like I'm buzzing at the moment. If I'm honest, I haven't had a moment to reflect. I felt like I was in it, in a sense. So I felt like I was at work telling a story of what was happening, and I was imagining bits of what I was saying and remembering that time. So although you were here, I felt as though you weren't here. I was reliving my history in a sense. And especially when I heard the voices of the participants, it just reminded me of that time that I spent with them, and the painful bits and the different bits just reminded me of meeting them and the realness. Because sometimes you can have an idea, and then now it's happened, it's like, I don't know, I'm just still buzzing on it, I suppose.
Does it ever feel like a burden that you carry, like this story, this space you work in?
Sometimes it can feel heavy when you hear negative stuff about the organisation, because obviously I still work with the organisation and I still enjoy the work that I do. So I think it's that, you know, you feel like you're doing something because you have a purpose, and I feel this is my purpose in a sense. So there's that aspect of my job where I'm influencing policy, but there's that aspect of my responsibility to show another side of prison work, which people don't generally get to see or understand.
I've got a question, I guess, which is related to an audience thing. So obviously these bits of audio, which are, some of them are really rough, and they were even more rough because they were done on a dictaphone way back when, and I had to get a technical guy to get a load of software to try and clean up these bits of audio, but they're still quite difficult to listen to, and some of them are around between, I guess, 1 and 2 minutes. So from an audio, I mean, I guess there's a few things happening in the performance. There's the poems, there's the narrative that Marcia tells so well and so beautifully spontaneously. There's the flip chart, there's the movement between one space and another, and then there's these bits of audio. I was interested to know how you felt about it. Did it irritate you that you couldn't quite hear things? Just how did it? I know that that's difficult, but also I think it's good having those voices in there. So I'm interested to, in an explorative way, to know something about that.
Well, I think there's 2 ways you could do it. You could clean it all up and get someone else to do that, so it's crystal clear and it's all right. Or you can stick with the deep down and dirty, and you know that's coming from there. But if you want to go somewhere bigger, perhaps, like you said, I was leaning a bit. I could hear me all right, I think that was the best bit of the evening. But if you want to try and if you want to do it in a big hall or something, I think you might need to sort of clean up that, you know, unless there's a better, I don't know, but, you know, I was sort of leaning forward a little bit.
Yeah, I quite like the how genuine it is that you have the clips to play back, because it plays it from a real perspective and you can feel that emotion. I feel like a solution would be getting a projector and put in the words, so put in the subtitles on so people can read it as well as hear the audio, so they can also hear the emotion and read what's going on in the audio. I think that would be...
Yeah, it'd be a shame to lose their voices. You know.
Yeah.
You've had them all that time, you know.
And you've brought them all this way. It's been like, what, 12 years?
Yeah.
So like... It would
I would agree that if you had actors repeating those voices, it wouldn't be the same thing, would it?
Yeah,
it would lose something. But it is quite difficult to hear, so it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
I feel like so many interesting things were laid out in different media, and it set my mind thinking in so many different ways, with so many different themes. Really, you know, it was a lot to process in the different media, and I sort of, as I got to halfway and towards the end, I felt like I wanted to be inside the ski. I actually like to walk in every day, and the sounds, you know, that you mentioned, and the experiences that those characters have gone through. So I kind of, and maybe it's just the way I tend to think about the world, but I sort of wanted to get almost in a novelistic way to get inside the skin of someone, the most empathic way to sort of connect to the experience of the story. Because you mentioned as well, I think, at the beginning, that you've grown up with some of the guys that then went to prison, and I think that in itself is a really fascinating thing. That you become the person in the prison that looks after them, and to find what both perspectives would be on that. It feels like there's a real story in there to be inside the characters that could perhaps complement this. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a long-winded answer.
No, because that's something that Mark does with his prison dialogues. He has individuals that sort of tell the stories from the prisoner perspective, and that is probably would be quite. I mean, that's one of the things I tried to capture with AP, and that's been getting his, because I always.
I really felt that. Yeah, I really felt it. It was really powerful. So yeah, perhaps that's. But I suppose that there's that bit. There's the dialogue and the actual, perhaps an actor acting the act, but. Then there's the novelistic side, which is you're inside someone's skin and working through their thoughts. And I felt like I wanted that level of depth because there's so much going on. And as the character said, half the time they don't feel they've got a voice. And so the voice is silent, but actually obviously there's a ton of stuff. The microaggressions and all those things.
But I think it is very much your story as well. So as regards to the point we've got it to, what we're trying to do is to tell Marcy's story. It's just to allow Marcy to tell her story in her own voice as truly to how she's experienced it as possible. And I guess there's limitations to what a piece like this is or can be, but I feel as though it's on the way to being a thing. That is what I'd say. I think really.
What next? Where's it going to go next? Do you know the next step?
I think I'll probably keep polishing it, and then I don't know what's next. It would be nice to be able to perform it sort of to a larger audience, and maybe even be able to perform it in prisons as well. That would be really good to be able to do that. But I feel like I've got to. It's been a long journey to get here, from just having the idea to then start writing, to then start working with Mark, and so. But obviously, I feel like I'm in the middle in a sense. So I've got to a good place. I've been able to perform in front of you all, and it will continue to grow, I think.
I think the conversation is quite important. I think the things that like we're doing now is actually quite important, and is an important part of what you're offering. And I think the more it can become conversation and involve people and have an interactive aspect, I think those things would make it stronger for me, I guess. And also, you're really good at all that type of stuff, and you've got such a lovely, strong voice, which I really love as well.
It projects.
Yeah. I wouldn't polish it too much.
Good comment.
As AP said, those voices, although at one point, at the beginning, I couldn't really hear it very well, it did start to jar a little bit, and then I just thought, I'm just going to listen to their voices, and I'm going to pick up the odd word which gave me kind of the idea, and then you kind of summarised it a little bit afterwards, so it felt enough, and I think to lose that, replace it would be a crying shame, but I think it's a fantastic idea to put subtitles up there.
Put down my hair and my chestnut skin. Unconscious bias is just an excuse to avoid looking within. So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me in. Let me work and do my thing. She's changing things, worked hard, qualified, and she's going in to change things. Prison walls so tall and thick, imposing scares her, but she still enters in. Teach all day long, them and they want to learn, and now it's her turn to reverse the curse. I'm more than my hair and my chestnut skin. Unconscious bias is just an excuse to avoid looking within. So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me in. Let me work and do my thing. This black woman works in correctional. She's a professional. Long hours working, long hours grafting, sleepless nights studying and planning. Too ambitious focus, no time for material things. She don't mind though, fulfilling her purpose. She's doing her thing. She makes prison a better place with her intellect and grace. She makes the world a better place with her intellect and grace. More than my hair and my chestnut skin. Unconscious bias is just an excuse to avoid looking within. So let me in, let me in. This black woman's got a lot to give. Let me in, let me in. Let me work and do my thing. It's a hard place, and it can't be denied. It's a hard place to work when you're black, even when you're qualified. It's a hard place, and it can't be denied. It's a hard place to work when you're a woman and you're black. Oh.